In the House, it's our friend Senator John Horhn, District 26, Hinds County, Madison County. Also chairman of the Senate Labor Committee and vice chairman of Senate Tourism Committee. Speaking of tourism, it has been a good year, John, and there's a lot of good things going on in our state. How are you doing? Can you hear me?
Paul, I'm having some difficulty hearing you.
Okay, let me see here. There's a volume control on that box there. See, now turn that box up.
There you go,
bit.
Paul. Yeah, there you go.
See, that's my degree in engineering.
Modern technology.
It is. You don't even have to hold them on there. They will be fine, and you can relax and enjoy the interview. That's the great thing about having video. I can see where your problem was, so there you go. I just mentioned this. We had a good year as far as tourism is concerned. Our fiscal year is over. We're still compiling some numbers. I don't know if you've seen any of the June numbers yet. Have you had a chance?
No, I've not had a chance.
Yeah. But tourism has been just exploded in our state, and it's been very, very healthy, and hopefully it will continue. But anything you want to mention, that being vice chairman, as far as what you will do next year, you think next year we need to do? Because we had talked about taking the tourism department as a standalone, and actually some of the people who knew best said that may not be a good idea, so I just say, well, you guys know more about it than I do.
Well, I think, first of all, the money that we invested in promoting Mississippi over the last couple of years and the dedicated revenue stream for tourism is now paying off. We're starting to see the benefits of that investment, particularly as we promote Mississippi outside of our contiguous states.
Which is good news because you got more and more people coming in. And I think, and I saw this somewhere, the length of stay from what it was 15 or 20 years ago, since casinos, of course, have been here, it's just been incredible. So people are spending more and more dollars with a longer and longer stay. I wish we had the better news to talk about as far as the capital city and part of your domain in your district as far as the crime is concerned. I talked to my friend George Flaggs the other day, and of course George put on a curfew because he said it just gotten to the point where he wanted to stop it, nip it in the bud. Your thoughts, because whatever we have decided to do is not working. The court system is a problem. Holding cells are a problem. Police on the streets are a problem. Leadership a problem. And it's going to hell in a handbasket, John. You've been here for a long time. Give me a little bit of wisdom.
Well, we're very concerned about it, particularly those of us in the Jackson delegation. Anytime we see situations where our colleagues become the victims of crimes, as well as average everyday citizens are victims of crimes, it's very, very troubling. And toward that end, what the legislature did was to authorize another 50 sworn officers to come under Capitol Police. We also added some additional judges to hear cases and try to clear out the backlog, and we added extra district attorneys for the DA's office to help prosecute a lot of these cases, as well as public defenders to help defend folks who were accused of crime. So we put about, I'd say somewhere in the neighborhood of $15 million back into our coffers to speak to the state's response to some of the things going on in the capital city. But what we're pleading with our brothers and sisters at the local level to do is to double down on crime prevention. We have a lot of officers that are leaving JPD and going to other jurisdictions. Some are even trying to come over to Capitol Police because the pay is better and the hours are better. And the situation is that we've got to double down on what it is that we are doing. We know that there are too many young people, young men in particular, that have access to guns, and we got to get that off the streets. And
all right, wait a minute now. You're giving me all the reasons, and we know those. I got to go back and ask you: have you met with the mayor? Has the Jackson delegation had a chance to sit down with the mayor and talk this thing out, and the city council, for that matter?
Well, we have had some conversations, but not nearly enough. We need to better coordinate the resources that we do have, and we're even having some challenges in getting jurisdictions straight between Capitol Police and Jackson Police Department. that there needs to be better coordination and better communication between those forces.
Realistically, though, the city of the Capitol Police in that little jurisdiction that you have around the Capitol complex, that's not going to help the city of Jackson that much at all.
Well, the Capitol complex is one thing and CCID is another. The Capitol Complex Improvement District goes all the way into West Jackson out to just beyond Jackson State University. It comes all the way back into downtown, over to the fairgrounds, all the way over to the R&D Center, back to the medical center, and back over to the Jackson Medical Mall. So it's a pretty wide swath of territory. And if we are able to dedicate Capitol Police in those areas, then that means JPD can dedicate its resources to other parts of the community.
Why can't you? Is that not allowed?
We wonder the same thing, Paul.
Well, who said that? Was that between the mayor of Jackson as blocking that, or what's the problem?
We're not quite sure what's going on at this point, but we're in the process of trying to find out so we can get better coordination.
How about the county sheriff, the Hinds County Sheriff's Department?
The Sheriff's Department has been working very well with Capitol Police. I think that there's probably more cooperation and communication there than with JPD, but we're hopeful that we'll see a big change come about very, very soon.
It's a little frustrating because what I'm hearing from you, the communication, the willingness to communicate and work between the three is broken.
Well, it's not where it needs to be right now. That's certainly for sure, and we're trying to work to get that communication and lines of cooperation open a little better.
At what point do you think the voters in the city of Jackson are going to have enough of this?
Well, we're the first year in a new term we're actually the second year as of a couple of days ago into a new term on the city council and in the mayor's office. So we don't have any way to recall individuals in Mississippi, and so that's a problem. So what we see is the need is that we have to do better coordination, better cooperation, and try to get everybody on the same page. And we're not on the same page right now.
When you said the police officers are leaving, I mean, that's an old story. We understand that. They'd love to get it. If they get the first halfway decent opportunity, they're gone. Is it a combination because of leadership and salary, or more leadership or more salary?
I think it's a combination of a lot of different things. They don't have a career ladder, a step ladder in place at JPD, and there are accusations that there's a lot of favoritism that goes on with in terms of who gets a promotion, who gets a salary bump, or whatever, and it's not being done in a process that is transparent and that folks have a lot of faith in.
Do you see anything positive that the city council and the mayor have done to maybe address the rising crime? I mean, the statistic that we got the other day was shocking. Per 1,000 population, we are the murder capital of the world. The state, Washington, D.C., is number one, but as far as states, the state of Mississippi is number one. You talk about tourism, you can do all you want as far as ads, but then one bleep on NBC News or mainstream media kills us.
Well, crime is going to kill us off if we're not careful, and
one way or the other.
We've got to do more to address the issue. There's no question about that.
I want to continue this conversation with Senator John Horhn coming up in a moment or two. Hang on. If you've got a question or two, slap it on the C Spire text line. As always, the phone number is 601-879-4395, the text line, 601-879-4395. Back with more Senator Horhn next. All right, we'll be back live on a Tuesday from the Trustmark Studios. Trustmark's retirement planning will fit your plans to a T, as in Trustmark. People you trust, advice that works. We're back with John Horhn. John, we were talking about the many components of fixing this, which none of them work unless you have cooperation from the Jackson mayor, Lumumba. They're not going to work. For instance, there's a problem with the judicial system, the drug courts, the youth courts. the districts themselves. Now you're talking about cooperation between the Hinds County Sheriff's Department, the Capitol Police, and the remaining people who were left in Jackson as far as the police department. There's an issue with holding cells that we hear. I don't know how you fix this.
Well, I understand that the county is putting up the money to make the repairs for the holding cell that you talked about. Mm-hmm. We have a real problem if we arrest folks and don't have a place to put them. And as of the last couple of weeks, the county has since said that it is going to put the money forward to offer for repair of the jail that's downtown that it will turn over to the city. And we're hoping
how long has that been inoperable or needed repairs?
Way too long.
It's just amazing. It's a dereliction of duty. It really is, because this guy's been in office now for a while. And this problem has existed for a long time.
Well, in there's a sentiment out there that the mayor seems to be in denial about the crime in Jackson. Mm-hmm. And the fact that the city council and the mayor are not really putting every resource possible into crime fighting and crime prevention. There's a real need for more economic development in this city so that we can create more jobs and give young men and women something to do. They're either getting involved in unsavory activities, a few of them, or we're seeing a lot of out-migration of our youth, and there's an aging population that's creeping into the city of Jackson, and we're not going to be anywhere if we can't keep our youth here and keep them gainfully employed and gainfully
You are absolutely right, and we don't talk about this at all, but you got a mom and dad or mom and or dad of a good kid in the African-American community in a bad neighborhood, and they're scared as hell. They want to get out of there the first chance they can to save their children, because they're scared as they could be that they're going to wind up on the streets too. We don't think about that sometimes.
Yeah, it's really something that's very, very troubling because we're only going to be as good as our youth, and if our youth are in jeopardy, if they're involved in unsavory activities, if they're involved in out migrating away from Jackson or away from Mississippi, it becomes a real problem, and the future of this city and the state, I think, become in jeopardy.
I'm worried sometimes, too, about what schools and the inner city schools are teaching these kids. There was this cut I had for a long time here, and it's a protege of Farrakhan, but the words kind of ring in your ears.
The Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said, if I took a picture of this whole room and I showed you the picture, who's the first person y'all gonna look for? Yourself, right? It ain't vanity if you say, I'm look at me, you want to make sure your hair good, got your shirt on right. He said the reason our children aren't interested in the educational system of today is because they don't see themselves in the picture.
They don't see themselves in the picture. Mm-hmm. And I thought about that, and I think, okay, whose failure is that? I don't know if it's government's. Well, it's parental or schools and government as far as government schools, but they don't see a future for themselves.
Well, the fact that so many young people have a loss of hope, it makes for a very dangerous situation. Mm-hmm. When an individual has no hope or doesn't see themselves in a picture and doesn't see that they have a future in a community, then they become a very dangerous asset in that community.
Boy.
And so I think Farrakhan was absolutely right that in our education system, we have to do more to energize young people to where they see that they have a future, they understand how they fit into the scheme of things, and they are encouraged to be more positive and more upbeat about their life and what their future portends.
There are so many of our generation as boomers, whether black or white, native-born Mississippians, who can't relate to this. But I had an interview once, and somebody told me that most of the young kids today in the inner city, they fully expect to wind up in jail. They fully expect that's the next stage they will be in. They will serve time in prison. It's not if, but it's going to be when, and what you can get out of it now before you go through that system. And I thought, Man, that's a bad way to live. How in the world can you take that next step and motivate yourself if you think sooner or later you're going to wind up there? Your daddy did, your granddaddy did, and how in the world do you break that chain?
Well, to solve all these problems, Paul, you're talking about a generational effort.
Yeah,
we're not going to fix this in a year or two. We have a whole generation of young men and women who fall into that thought pattern that I've never been 5 blocks from home other than going to school or whatever. I have young people who've never been in a grocery store that live in Jackson, Mississippi. We have folks who've never been outside of their neighborhood. And when you have a microcosm of hopelessness like what we're seeing in our community, it is a recipe for disaster. Yeah. And we've got to approach it and attack it on all fronts. Law enforcement is an issue. Education is an issue. Workforce development is an issue. But at the bottom of it all, poverty and hope. If you're in poverty and you have no hope, again, you become a very dangerous person in your community.
John, how prevalent is how scared some of the people are in these inner city neighborhoods of squealing or calling the police for fear they will be taken out?
The code of the streets is the code that seems to rule a lot of these communities. You don't snitch. You don't tell on anybody. If you do, you're breaking the code, and there will be consequences. And so there's a lot of silence out there that is counterproductive to our getting to the bottom of what's really going on in these communities, who's behind a lot of the crime in the communities. There is a curtain of silence.
So you're saying basically there are a lot of gangs out there, probably neighborhood gangs that we don't even know what the names are.
Yeah, well, I think that there is a gang problem. You know, about 5 years ago, I did some research, got funding from the legislature to look at look at an assessment of what is going on with crime in Jackson, but also to offer some valuable solutions. There was an analysis of our criminal justice system. We did an analysis of our law enforcement. We did an analysis of our education system, our court system. And there were plenty of good recommendations that came out of it. But one of the things that the report said is that we have gangs and we don't have gangs. You know, there isn't the kind of organization that is part of a nationwide network. Somebody might just like the colors of a gang in California or in Illinois.
They're more of a disorganized gang.
Yes, but it is getting more and more organized as time goes on.
Let me ask you the $64,000 question. How do you get guns out of the hands of people who shouldn't have them?
If I knew the answer to that, Paul,
somebody's got to. Before we do anything, John, we've got to come up with an answer.
Yeah, we've got to deal with that.
If I ask you that answer, to give me that answer, and don't worry about wokeism, don't worry about anything else, how would you do it? How do you get guns out of the hands of some of these repeat offenders? And again, if you're looking for any bright side, a lot of these people who are causing, whether it's in Hattiesburg or the Gulf Coast or in the Mississippi Delta, are repeat offenders. They're the same people doing this over and over. It's not all of them, but it's enough that's causing mayhem. How would you get guns out of bad people's hands?
Well, I would actually do more checkpoints, Paul. You know, that's come under a lot of scrutiny. But I think checkpoints work in terms of getting not only bad stuff off the streets, but bad people off the streets. I think that we've got to also offer better training programs that will incentivize folks to take a different path than a path of crime. And we don't have a whole lot of workforce development programs inside the capital city. We see them all around Jackson, but where the problem is, and the hardest to serve element of the community is we don't see as much resource being put into having good, credible workforce development opportunities for young men and women.
You are also chairman of the vice chair of Senate. The chairman of Senate Labor. I want to ask you this: did the equal pay bill originate in your committee?
No, it did for the 2 years prior. It originated in Judiciary this time.
Well, you guys guided it to the proper location then.
Yes.
And congratulations on that. John, as always, sir, thank you for being open and honest. We always appreciate it, and thank you for your visit, sir.
Thank you, Paul.
You got it. John Horhn. John is Senator, Mississippi District 26, Hinds County.